What does it take for the estimated 3 million eligible young voters to come out and have their say for their future? With the federal election weeks away, what is being done to encourage our youth to mark the ballot? That's next on Perspectives. Taking a half hour out of your day to vote is all it takes to make your voice heard. The right to choose a government is something that people are fighting for all over the world. Why is it then that more than half of our young Canadians don't exercise that right to vote? How would political landscape look if the next generation took more of an active role in electing the leaders of today? Our guests are here tonight to talk about the youth vote. As always, we also invite you to call in and give your perspective on the show. Gentlemen, welcome tonight. This is our youth panel to start off the show, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have each of you introduce who you are and what school you're with.
I'm Ben Collis. I'm from St. Andrews College.
Welcome.
And I'm in grade 11.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm Tori Glendenning. I'm also from St. Andrews College.
And I'm Parker Cumming, and I'm also from St. Andrews College.
Now, did you guys see the debate last night?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
What'd you think?
I thought it was really interesting. The questions that were asked kind of hit the nail on with a lot of issues that are relevant to a lot of Canadians, although something that I think was left out of the debate was the issue of the conflict in Afghanistan. It's been the biggest military conflict that we've been engaged in since World War II, and with the exception of a few comments last night, I think that it's been left out of the election so far.
What do you think of that, Ben?
I'd have to agree. I think that the war in Afghanistan it's seen by many people as not a huge issue, and I think that for the people that are overseas fighting, they see a valid reason why they're there, and a lot of Canadians and a lot of people all over the world don't appreciate those reasons, and I think a lot of the times they're just not educated about the reasons. They just see a war in Afghanistan that's been dragging on for years, and most of them don't know why or why we're still fighting.
Do you think the public education is there on these issues, or is it a case that the general public doesn't choose? And I'm not just saying youth, I mean everybody.
Well, I think that especially over the past couple of years, Afghanistan's kind of been a major issue in the news. It's all, every time I turn on the news, it's something about Afghanistan. Whether even during the Olympics, you'd have people talking about our troops over to Afghanistan and giving shout-outs to them over there. So I don't think it's the lack of knowledge. I'm just not sure why the politicians have chosen to have it as a side note for this election, although there are other issues that are important, but I think it's something that needs to be touched on more than it has already.
What issues did you pick up on last night, Parker?
I think one of the most important things was the economy, and I think that's really the main point for the election is which leader can properly manage the economy for the long term, because we've had a huge recession across the world, and frankly, I want to see a leader who can keep Canada on the right track and continue us just have a long, sustainable economy, which means in the future, when we become older, when we grow, we have a Canada that's strong and thriving.
Now, Stephen Harper, I think even last night has made no bones he's shooting for a majority government. Do you think the stability of Canada is better with a majority government, Ben, or are we quite fine running under the minority governments we've seen for the last 7 years?
You know, to be honest, I'm not really quite sure, so I'll pass it off to
What do you think?
Well, I think that Harper's push for majority government is sort of necessary in a sense, because we've had a minority government for the past several elections. There's been results of minority government, and it's just been election after election, and every single time they come on, like Harper said last night, there's all this bickering about who should be in power and who can do it right. I think the most important thing is to actually act on something rather than talk about acting on these issues.
Now, you've just said bickering. And I understand last night Michael Ignatieff said it's not bickering, it's what you call political debate. What do you think of that?
Well, it's both. There is a lot of bickering. If you've ever watched the House of Commons in session, it's pretty pathetic. You see people yelling at each other. They clap and try to drown out other politicians. You want to see your elected officials have a certain standard of class, and it's true for all parties. Everyone's really guilty of it. So, yeah, you want to see an end to the bickering, and you want to see politicians work together and do their jobs, which is improve Canada and make it better for everyone who lives here.
What issues do you find of interest, Ben?
In this election, for me personally, I'd say that the purchase or non-purchase of the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is what's on my mind. And that's probably what's making the decision for me right now, currently edging towards the conservative side, because I see that being a big and relevant issue.
What about the issue of contempt of Parliament, not being forthright and bringing information forward on that issue or other issues? Do you find that to be the game changer in this election, or not that much of a concern to you?
I wouldn't say that it's too much of a concern to me. But no, I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Now, you spoke about economics being an issue. The whole thing has come out, and I think the opposition is trying to push out that there's a lack of trust in this previous Conservative government. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it is. When you have something like contempt of Parliament for the governing party, it makes you wonder. Personally, I would consider myself a Conservative supporter, but the things I've seen Stephen Harper do and how kind of his real controlling attitude over Parliament, it makes you wonder, because I like the Conservative ideology. It's just Stephen Harper makes you think, he's not really the person I look to as a leader.
But you also have to think about the fact that the Liberals are going to try and, well, not just the Liberals, but all of the other three major parties, we're trying to push for election as it is, and every time there's a minority government, as we saw Ignatieff last night talk about how the distinction between the party who gains the most votes gets the right or gets to try to form a government, which sort of indicates to me that he may be looking to gain the government control through one way or another. But
you would be talking about that little specter of a coalition floating around there, would you?
Well, that's always an option. That's on the table for them, and it's perfectly within their rights. But when we're talking about getting down to the issues, as I said before, we pretty much need to act rather than just debate about who should try and do it.
Now, Ben, we're trying to get out the issues, but less than 40% in the last election, 2008, less than 40% of eligible young voters didn't partake or didn't vote. Do you think they're missing the boat?
I do. And the thing is, I just feel like they aren't seeing the importance of the election. I guess from my standpoint, I've seen, in terms of issues, quite a smooth government in Canada for quite some time. But I just don't think there's enough information out there for young people. Unless you take like a politics course in school or something like that, you don't really see any information or hear anything about it, especially for people in high school going into university, unless that's their area of study.
So I guess if it's fair to say your feeling is there's not enough education as relates to all levels of government within the current Ontario curriculum. Like, you're not finding out about what's going on in your municipal governments, your provincial governments, and your federal governments, where you feel that when you get to the age that you can vote, that you have the information or know where to find the information to make those decisions.
Yeah, and I would also say that I think that that's a big group of people that the officials that are trying to become elected are missing out on, because personally I feel like we're not educated enough in the areas, and there's a lot of convincing to be had, and a lot of opinions that haven't been formed yet that could benefit certain people.
Tori, how can we get this information out a little bit further so that we do get more people engaged? And it's not just youth. In fairness, it's not just youth that aren't coming out and voting. It's everybody. Exactly.
Well, I agree with Ben on how the education on political matters isn't something that's on the forefront of the minds of Canadians. But and I think the reason is, as you said, it's just not youth. It's everybody. The voter turnout in this country, it's not the greatest. It would be better to see a lot more of the population being represented when they're voting. And again, I think that starts with education on the issues, but I also think it's something that's not immediate to the Canadian families, because we've had, I don't know how many elections in the past couple of years. It almost seems as though it's redundant now, and we hear about an election, so okay, oh wow, it's another election. And it's kind of we've become used to it, and maybe we should take it more seriously than we are right now.
Well, when it's estimated at $300 million a pop for one of these elections, where could all of that money have gone, and what better use could have been put to?
Exactly. These politicians stand up there, especially last night, debating about how money can be spent efficiently. Well, elections aren't way money. Calling election every couple of years aren't ways that money can be spent efficiently. So I think that's an issue that you have to look at.
Parker, what do you think about some of the Liberal initiatives, especially when they talk about the education passport? Applying $1,000 for 4 years for university or college tuition. Are those programs that, even though you might have a conservative sway, are those things that are an interest to you?
With their university passport idea, I'm lucky enough in a situation where I don't necessarily need to. It's not one of my top priorities, but I think investing in education is very important because you want to have the best society possible, and one of the ways to getting that is through education. And normally again, I'm a conservative, but anytime someone says, I want to spend money on education, I'm all for it, because what does it make? It makes better voters, it makes better citizens, and a better country.
Do you have the conversation about politics around the kitchen table at home, Ben?
Well, not lately, because I live at school.
Yeah.
But certainly when I was at home, I come from a family of lawyers, so there's a lot of arguing going on. But especially since most of my family is quite liberal, and I'm probably the only conservative around.
Really? And how does that debate go? Again, is it the respective ideals, of course, but do you really get down and hammer out the policies themselves?
Yeah, especially with my sister. She's quite a liberal. And I'd say, and not just Canadian politics as well. It's just also issues just from all over the world. The United States, Bermuda, where I'm from, Africa, well, especially right now. And it's just issues throughout the world, because I guess that's the best way of learning, really, is to just argue with your family.
And how do you think? How do you think they gauge it? You know, we look at you take some of those places you've named, and we've looked at the unrest in the rest of the world. There are people out there that are dying, that are young people wanting that right to vote, and we're sitting here in this country and we're not really seeing them take that up. What does that make you think? Like, how do you process that?
I think it's unfortunate. A lot of people just don't understand like what a right it is. And I guess the sense of urgency just isn't around in Canada right now, especially when you're living in one of the underdeveloped countries, well, in Africa right now, where all the unrest is. You see it right in front of your face every day, the effects of not having that right to vote. But as Tori was saying, when you're getting these elections every couple of years, and it just sort of becomes complacent to even think about it, because it's so commonplace that you don't see it as any sense of being urgent.
What do you think, Tori?
No, I agree with Ben, and especially on the topic, but I disagree with him on the topic of discussion in the home. I know in my house, politics is a very scarcely touched on subject. And I think if you want to start increasing that voter turnout, that's where you have to start. Start getting people to talk about it in their homes, and again, as Parker said before, increasing in funds to education and things like that obviously is important, and that's how you're going to do it. You have to educate people in order for them to be aware of what's going on, and in turn come out and vote because they care about the issues.
Do you have much of a discussion at home, Parker, about politics, or is it just your own ideals that you keep and discuss at school?
I actually kind of got into politics. I'm a pretty avid reader, and my parents would always have the newspaper around, so whether it was reading the Star growing up or the National Post, I just found it interesting. I was always proud to be Canadian, and because of that, I wanted to make this country better. So one of the ways you do that is being an informed citizen. So my parents may be not necessarily the biggest political people, but if I want to discuss something with them, they're more than happy to talk to me.
Now, you guys are just under that wire to be able to vote in this election. Does that make you a little bit angry or a little bit frustrated? Because you seem like you're in tune with what's going on, and you would take up the right to vote if you had the chance at this point. Tori?
Well, obviously, I would love the right to vote. I wish I was 18 right now so I could vote in this election, but that's something, again, you have to think about, because and that's why the age limit exists, is because I guess, and we were talking about it before, the youth, how aware youth are of the issues right now. It's not really, they aren't, for the majority part anyway, and that's something you have to be careful about. So I wish I could vote, but unfortunately I can't.
Would you take the opportunity if you could vote right now, Ben?
I would, but as Tori said, I don't think that it would be wise to have young people like us voting right now, especially since there is such a large group of people that aren't aware of the issues. I think that you do need those extra couple years to understand the government, and then the rest of us just have to slog it out.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. You've been wonderful guests, and wish you best in your future endeavors. We'll be back right after this.